You are listening to Take Sports, breaking down the NBA game with insight and analysis all in one take. So without further ado, let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to Take Sports, where we do sports podcasting in one take. This is episode 4. We'll be discussing the Heat, the Rockets, and the Kings. I'm sitting here with Steve. Steve, why don't you say hello?
Hi everybody, this is Steve, and welcome to the show. We're really excited once again to get together and talk some ball. It's been another week. Not as much news this week, but still a lot to talk about, and we're going to be breaking down some of the rosters that we see coming up in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we get right into it? Obviously, everyone's talking about the LeBron move to Cleveland. We wanted to talk a little bit about what that means for the Heat as well and what that team's going to look like. So do you have like a lineup prediction for us or anything like that, Steve?
Well, I mean, it's still a little bit early. We're not sure exactly what the team's going to look like. I think re-signing Mario Chalmers, I'm not crazy about that. We know the issues that they have with point guard. I don't believe Napier is going to be somebody who can step in at any time soon. But one thing I could say about the team is I really believe they're actually better off than a lot of people think. I like the pickup of McRoberts and Dang. Good pickups. And I mean, in the loss of James, you're not going to replace him in any way whatsoever. But re-signing Bosch, I thought was huge. It was a surprise. It was a surprise to me. So right now, I see it as being Chalmers, Wade, Dang, McRoberts, Bosch. That's the way it looks to me. Do you have any ideas there?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely looking at this team, and the thing about starting McRoberts there, that I agree that with the other four guys, I mean, it's pretty obvious. But if you're looking at McRoberts and Bosch, they're both sort of pass first bigs, and neither of them are real bangers. I wonder if they're going to start Chris Anderson at that spot instead. I know he's old, but he's been a great player for them over the years. I mean, you got to worry about foul trouble a little bit with him, but that might be a good reason to bring Josh McRoberts off the bench to back him up, because I'm not sure if Josh McRoberts is going to be able to play. One of those guys is going to have to be guarding centers around the league, and I don't see either one of them stopping Dwight or Hibbert or anyone like that. Although, if Hibbert plays the way he did in the playoffs, I think anyone can stop him.
He hasn't put up huge numbers either the last couple of years while getting full-time playing time. He's only a 9-point guy a game. His rebound numbers are not impressive. They dropped by 3 to about 5 this year. So he's not really a starter on that team. I really don't see too many other options. I'd be surprised to see Anderson start on that team. I'd be shocked to see. I don't see him being a starter in 8 anyway, to be honest with you. I could see they still have Haslam, right? They re-signed Haslam, I believe.
Yeah, they did.
So yeah, he could be a starter over McRoberts. I don't see it being Anderson at all.
Well, again, I just sort of am going back to the fact that that team needs a physical presence inside, and Haslam is a physical presence. You're right. I think that he would be a good fit there. But when you're coming down the floor and you have two guys, neither of whom really are big bangers or are going to be doing a lot for your team as far as being an inside presence, that makes me worry a little bit about what I would be looking at going into the season. Josh McRoberts, he's a great passing big, and that was definitely his forte in Charlotte. But when you look at his numbers, the rest of his numbers, he averaged less rebounds than Chris Anderson. He averaged less blocks. He's not a physical defensive presence. I think he's more athletic than Anderson out on the wing. But again, you're looking at having another guy who's an athlete in Chris Bosh. I don't think Chris Bosh is a starting center either.
You don't think Chris Bosh is a starting center?
I think Chris Bosh is a starting power forward. I think Chris Bosh is one of the better power forwards in the league. I don't think that I would put Chris Bosh down low against can you imagine how easily Dwight Howard would muscle Chris Bosh around?
Yeah, but so that's a tough one because he's in a position right now with this team where he is going to have to step it up, and I think they are going to throw him out there at the center position. Uh, his numbers in Toronto when he was the man were very, very good. Now,
As a power forward.
and he played as a power forward. Generally he's always listed as a center. Not that that means much, anyhow. But uh, they have some problems. They've got some problems down low. I do not like their point guard play at all. So the team has some issues. That being said, I still say in the East, I actually see him as about a 6 seed.
Well, I mean, me and you talk about it a lot off mic, where the two most important positions in the NBA or in any basketball really are point guard and center. And this team is lacking in a lot in those two specific positions where you really need strong performers. It doesn't have to be a scorer, it doesn't have to be, a specific type, but you need a strong player in both of those positions in order to be a successful team. And this team, I look at it from top to bottom, and a couple of big things come to mind is, they don't, as you said, they don't have that leader from the point guard spot. I don't think Dwayne Wade is at the point in his career where he can carry that leadership responsibility. And they don't have a truly, a great center down low. So that brings up a lot of questions to me as far as how they can produce, not just on defense, but I wonder where the offensive production is going to come from as well.
Well, Dwayne Wade's definitely going to have to really step up his game this year. His numbers really weren't as bad last year as everybody made him out to be. I wouldn't say at all, but he definitely has to step up his game, and I think a lot's going to depend on him. I don't see them competing in the East at all. I don't see them making a run at the finals or anything at this point. But for them to get into the playoffs, maybe win a series, he's going to have to step up his game. And he has to be, the second leader there. I think right now, Chris Bosh is the leader of that team. And he's going to be the key also. I mean, it's going to be on them to pretty much see how far this team goes, in my opinion.
I mean, I can't even, to be completely honest, I'm looking at this roster, I can't even see them making the playoffs. Just because, again, this is an aging team. You said, as you just said, Dwayne Wade didn't have that bad of a season last year. Well, he only played 54 games. He wasn't an everyday starter. He took a week off here and there. He rested before the playoffs. He was not a consistent player for this team, and when he wasn't there, they had LeBron James to pick up the slack. If you look at the on-court versus off-court prediction or numbers for LeBron, Miami's offensive rating was 113.7 when LeBron was on the court. It dropped by 10 points when he left the court. There's nobody else on that team that can carry the offensive load.
No, you can't replace that. You can't replace that. I'm not saying in any way you can replace it. Not at all. Not at all. But, all right. Well, let's put it this way then. How would you rate their off season? What happened with LeBron leaving? Now it's up to Miami to do something. Do you think they put together themselves a fairly decent team with what was out there? Or do you think they could have made a better move?
Well, let me answer that question. I'm going to sort of dodge the question, but it's the best way I can think of to answer it. I think they put together the best team with what they had available. I don't think that they should have put together the best team with what they had available. I think that they are trying to hang on to this idea that they're still going to be successful. I don't have a problem with them bringing back Bosh. As you said, I think that's a great move. I do worry a little bit about where this team is going to be in the future. I see what they're doing is sort of similar to what happened to the Celtics back, when they had the Bird and McHale and those guys, and they held on to them for too long and they didn't get any assets back for them. And this team is so old that, again, I just worry, especially if they're able to bring back Ray Allen or, whatever happens there. But most of their guys are over 30. most of their big performers from last year are over 30. This team is a very, very old team, and once LeBron left, I feel like the best move for them in this offseason would have just been to let it go.
I actually toyed with the idea of not re-signing Wade. Once I had Bosh signed, not resigning Wade. I toyed with the idea of maybe them picking up Stevenson, uh, possibly making a run at the time for Avery Bradley, something along that lines. Uh, just something younger, something like you say, something for the future, because this team's not going to be in good shape. Uh, but I still say at the same time, hey, Chris Bosh, he stayed, he got paid, but he's a good leader. He'll be a good leader on a team, and that's always, that's real important to have somebody like him there. And one thing the Heat have done, they really haven't had too many losing seasons. I think they're smart enough to make the right moves in the future. But right now, looking at the payroll, the roster, and so forth, it doesn't look that great. And it just killed when I look at that point guard position. You look at the depth chart, and I just cringe. As great as and how likable and everybody's rooting for Napier there, he hasn't proven a thing, and you have no idea what he can do out there. But
No, and I think that forcing Napier to become a producer for this team, I don't want him to be starting because as I've said before, I really like Shabazz Napier. Of course, he's a UConn guy. I love UConn guards. Yeah. And I really want to see him succeed in one of the worst positions I can imagine him being in. We talked about it a little bit with the draft show where we were talking about Marcus Smart in Boston. I think that he might be in a similar position if they try to force him to start, try to force him out there too early, as they could potentially ruin this young man's career because they're trying to expect too much out of him too quickly.
Oh, it can happen. It can happen to players. It's In a player like that, I'm not quite sure. I actually think he's in my opinion behind Marcus Smart. I think if one of them could handle it, one over the other. Right now, I would say Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart is by far a better player. I was just using it as a comparison.
Right. But, Napier's an interesting player, and I'm sure he'll get his share of playing time on that team. But I still see him. Around maybe a 6 or a 7 seed. We were talking earlier about the Knicks possibly being, around an 8 seed. Well, I think this Heat team is a whole heck of a lot better than the Knicks. So, that's why I see him.
Well, I mean, in an Eastern Conference where defense is king, again, I just go back to the fact that this team doesn't have a true bona fide offensive starter on, a really great player starter on this team. The last time Chris Bosh led, his highest point total season ever, he almost scored 2,000 points in Toronto. That team finished with 39 wins. When he is relied on to lead his team, that's not necessarily a good sign. I can't see Dwayne Wade coming out and scoring 19 points again. I can't see him having an 82-game season. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen for the rest of his career. He is going to be a guy who's going to have to take it easy on his body. He's had probably the toughest NBA career as far as what the toll has been on him physically of any of the superstars I can think of. And I just can't imagine him being a consistent, relied upon performer for them. Chris Bosh is the guy to go to. Last time he did that wasn't necessarily the right solution for them.
Well, like I said, I think you'd feel a lot better actually with a player like Lance Stevenson, like I spoke about, somebody along that lines. Might have been the better move for that team. At least take a chance on somebody in the future. And Wade probably could have ended up on a very, very good team. 6 man on a very good team, a championship team. He'd be a very good piece. But I think even right now in his career, his age, he's got the number of age in his favor. He's much older player than he actually is. So he's still able to sign a pretty large contract. But he'd be an excellent 6 man on a championship team. He'd be
the big rumor was him going to Chicago. I think that would have been a great fit for him for what you're talking about.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. That would put Chicago, even though Chicago is already there, that would put Chicago right up there as one of, if not the best team in the East.
So, I mean, you're talking about Lance Stevenson, and again, I just go back to the fact that, I mean, this Miami Heat team is not a bad defensive team. Lance Stevenson's strength is his defense. What about going after someone I know he's still out there, or at least the last I knew he was still out there? Eric Bledsoe is still on the market, I think. I mean, he's still a restricted free agent. I don't know if the Suns have made an offer. He's he's not as old as Lance. He's not going to have the playoff experience, but he does have some more offensive chops as far as being able to score. He might even solve their point guard issue.
But it would be a better option than Chalmers. I'll say that. It definitely would be. Better option than Chalmers, better option than Norris Cole. It would probably be the best option, although, he's not. He also, Bledsoe's not going to be a point guard who's going to lead you into the future at all. He is who he is. He's probably hit his ceiling. You know what type of player he is, what he's going to give you, but that might not be the worst thing either, especially on a team like
I mean,
that.
how can you say he's already hit his ceiling when he's only been in the league for, so few years?
Uh, I don't know. It just feels like it. It just feels like it when I watch him play. Some players you can actually see, flashes of what they could be, and it's just something I haven't really seen with him all that often. That's all. It's just my opinion on him as a player. I don't see him as, you know, I don't see a championship team out there, and he's the starting point guard. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, what's your argument for that? Because I'm just looking at what he's done in his career. He's had a season where he shot 40% from beyond the arc. He's a good finisher in traffic. He's long. He's quick. He doesn't necessarily post huge assist numbers, but he's a scoring type point guard, and he actually did have almost 6 assists last year, which is pretty much the league average for most of the non-Rondo point guards out there. I just want to hear a little bit more as to why you think he's hit his ceiling.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm just not truly sold on him. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen a ton of his games, but I'm not. I just haven't been sold on him. I don't know if it's even in his whole career. I just see him in the mold of a bench player, a sixth man. A sixth man is the way I've just always seen him. And, I know last season, especially last season, he did come into his own. And I just don't know. There's something about him. There's just something about him that I'm just not crazy about in his game. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it is, like you said, he had more assists last year than any year in his career. And, 6 point, what'd you say, 6.5, 6.6, somewhere in that ballpark?
It was 5.5, but I mean, again,
Yeah.
I'm just comparing. You just said that Dwayne Wade didn't have a bad season last year. Eric Bledsoe had one less point per game and had one more assist per game than Dwayne Wade did. I mean, if there's a guy that you could potentially groom to be not necessarily the next Wade, but somebody you could take over the shooting
right.
guard spot as Napier matures, that's not a bad option at all.
Right, and I said Dwayne Wade didn't have, his season was not bad. And, that's not, if I'm talking about Bledsoe, I'll say the same thing about him. He didn't have a bad season. I'm not saying that or anything like that. I'm just saying, I don't see him as being more than a six man. I think he's another guy who's a good six man, just the way I actually just talked about Dwayne Wade, although he's much younger. I just don't see him as a starting point guard in the league. And we'll see.
All right.
We'll
well,
see.
I mean, I think
he's
that's
still
a great.
he's still out there, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
All right.
still an option as a restricted free agent. I think that that's a great fit. I mean, if you're looking at if the Heat, anyone in the Heat front office is listening, I think you got to go out and get him.
Oh, like I said, it's an upgrade to your position. I'm not gonna dispute that at all. That's an upgrade to your position. Hey, and face it, it might not be a bad pickup because the reality facing the Heat is they're not going to win the championship. And, so you make moves like this. Those are the moves you make. But I don't know how much money he's asking for. Is money the issue why he's still out there?
I mean, I think that at this point, if you're in Phoenix, you're looking at the fact that they already have 2 point guards, and I don't know if they need to sign Eric Bledsoe to what he wants, which I haven't heard what he is asking for yet, but I can imagine it's not going to be cheap. He almost had 20 points a game last year.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but he's still out there. That's the thing.
He
And
is. He is still
I
out
don't
there.
know how much money Miami has to spend. Do you? If they've got,
I could find out really quickly.
um, 'cause if they got if they got some money to spend, I'm not sure. I'd have to check to see how much Bledsoe is actually looking for. But
I actually haven't. I've been paying attention to that situation a little bit because he is, I think, probably the best available point guard out there right now. Um, he really, I haven't heard anything as far as what he's asking for.
yeah,
But the Miami Heat, again, like a sign and trade situation might not necessarily be a bad option for them in this situation. They want to get rid of some of those big contracts. Um, you know, I think the Suns are on the uprise, but they're probably looking to get some expiring contracts for next year's free agency as well. It's looking.
and my guess is the Heat doesn't have those expiring contracts. Um, but I don't know. Well, I think going into the season, I think they're going to be just running with Chalmers anyways to begin the season, and and I still see him as about a 6 seed. I don't think they're that bad picking up Dang and McRoberts. So I think we should roll into the Rockets.
All right. Well, fine. If we have to.
I know you've been waiting to do that, so I know you are. You know, if you haven't heard by now, John is a Rockets fan, a big time Rockets fan, and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot more to say about the subject than I do. You know a lot more about the subject than I do. Just to give you a couple quick thoughts. I think about the Rockets right now is as I'm looking at it, I actually see that team as being very, very flawed. That team, in my opinion, has a lot of problems right now, and it was an awful. It's just been a horrible offseason. And as a Rockets fan, I would not be too happy right now. And it's like a train wreck out there, honestly. Things are going on. There's, everything between Harden and Parsons right now, and they don't have the greatest teams that they're going to put on the court. I know you love Pat Beverly, but he's not proven yet. I have faith that he can be a very, very good player in this league. I think you're higher on him than I am. But they had a terrible offseason, but they took a huge chance. It was a huge risk. It would have been a very high reward if the moves that they made panned out. They got the players that they were looking for, namely Bosch. So I think they took that. Murray took that chance, and it didn't really pay off for him right now. Um, I'll be honest with you. I think they're in tough position to. I think they're going to be lucky if they make the playoffs. And I hate to say that. I know you love the Rockets, and I hate to say that, but there are a lot of good teams out west. But I'm going to let you roll on this one.
All right. Well, saying that this team isn't going to make the playoffs is just absolutely I can't disagree with that enough. They still have arguably the best two guard in the NBA. They still have arguably the best center in the NBA. That 2-1-2 punch right there, especially with an offseason of them working together, if they don't make the playoffs, they need to absolutely fire their head coach, because any coach worth his salt that has two players worth of that caliber should pretty much be able to put anything around them and make it work.
Agreed. That should get you to the playoffs. I'll agree with that.
The other thing, so this team isn't necessarily as in trouble as everyone thinks. Because what I'm looking at as far as what they had last year versus what they had this year, it's actually very similar. The team that went to the playoffs last year, they had a couple of they had James Harden, they had Dwight Howard, they had Chandler Parsons. Obviously, as you touched upon, that sort of bad blood thing between Harden and Parsons, everyone's going to forget about that by the time the season starts. That happens pretty much anytime a breakup happens. It's just like anything of that sort going down, they're going to end up. Harden basically said Parsons was a role player, which he was. I mean, and Parsons taking offense to that is sort of foolish. To be fair, from the Rockets' perspective, they didn't see him as a star, and the Mavericks did, and they paid him like a star. Now, if he doesn't turn into a star, that's one of the worst contracts in the NBA, because right now he looks like a guy who possibly could go off for big games, possibly, but right now he's looking like a guy who's going to have like 20 points a game. He's getting paid way more than like an Eric Bledsoe, and that's about what Eric Bledsoe did. So, they saw him as a star. The Rockets didn't. So, that I don't have a problem with the Rockets letting him go. Now, I think the Rockets should have kept him for one more year for a playoff push at the the less than $1 million contract that he had in his that option.
Yeah.
But once they decided to opt out of that, which they, if you're sitting in Daryl Morey's chair, I don't disagree with that idea. Because right now, again, going back to looking at the NBA as a whole, up until now, the NBA has been a league of 3 stars. The 3-star teams, you look at the Celtics, then you look at the Heat, you look at even what the Spurs have built, they've got sort of 3 stars. It's been a 3-star league up until now. There aren't really many teams other than the Spurs that still have 3 stars. It's LeBron and Kyrie. Wiggins is developing. It's Durant and Westbrook. It's a league of 2 stars, and the Rockets have 2 stars, so they're competitive in a 2-star league. If you look at that, I don't think that they had a terrible offseason. Now, if they had gotten Bosch, they would have been pretty much the only 3-star team in the entire NBA at that point. That's a risk you had to take. If you're sitting in Daryl Morey's seat, that is a risk you had to take. I don't have a problem with that at all.
I agree with the risk entirely. I agree with it. It backfired, but I agree with it. Yeah, but go on. I've got a couple things I'm going to throw in a second here, but I just want to hear what you got to say here. Beyond that.
So, and then again, you're looking at the team that they had last year that they went to the playoffs with. One of our big issues was we didn't have any defense on the perimeter. We went out and got one of the best defensive small forwards in the league, in my opinion, and Trevor Ariza. He was in Houston before. He knows the town. He knows the front office. Didn't play for McHale, but he can acclimate to a new coach. I think that he solves a big hole that we have on the perimeter. Now, I don't think that we're a championship team, because I realize that everything I've said right now makes it sound like I think we're a championship team. I'm not jaded into thinking that. We do have a couple of big holes, and one of them is power forward defense. We have Dwight Howard, but we saw last year in the playoffs, LaMarcus Aldridge absolutely lit us up. He destroyed Terrence Jones. The only reason we were able to get close to competing with them is when we put Ashik in. We lost him to the Pelicans this offseason, so that's not a great, I'm still very wary about that. The offseason isn't over. If we go out and we pick up a good defensive 4, we pick up a good defensive backup center that we can play next to Howard at some point, when we need to, that really eases my feelings about that a lot. And you mentioned Beverly. I'm just going to touch on that really fast. I don't think anyone in Houston, especially in the front office, is thinking that Patrick Beverly is the point guard of the future. He's a good player. He's a great defensive player. He's a pest. He gets into people's heads. That's really something that they're looking for. However, when you're looking at the guys that they're bringing up in their D League, especially, which I like to watch a lot of the Vipers, because they're setting this new precedent in the D League where, they literally shot 47% of their shots last year were 3-pointers. This is a team that, they took a lot, they made a lot, and they lived and died by the 3. And all of the guys that are coming up from the D League right now, can shoot and make threes. You look at Troy Daniels, who was brought up basically for the playoffs last year, hit that game-winning three. All of these guys know how to do it. The Rockets system is based off of hitting threes. They need a point guard that can hit threes. That's what they thought they were getting in Jeremy Lin. Patrick Beverley can do it a little bit, but I tell you what, Isaiah Cannon can absolutely hit threes. That kid can score. I'm really excited to see what he can do running next to James Harden this year, because I think he's going to be our backup point guard, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do.
Well, Isaiah Cannon's actually, now he's a player I do like there. I look at the bigs. I see them having some they got Dwight and, like you said, arguably one of the best centers out there. Um, I just I don't see much of a bench. I know you're big on Troy Daniels, but right now Troy Daniels is who he is. Um, for all intensive purposes, he's a rookie. Uh, played most of the season, if all the season in D League there. I know you like him a lot. He can hit the three, which is really nice. Isaiah Cannon, once again, I like his game a lot, and I can see him being the steady backup there. But it's small forward, at power forward, I don't see any backup whatsoever, and I think you need to uh, do something to get stronger down there if they want to.
Well, let's not forget that Robert Covington was the D League MVP last year. I mean, I'm not saying that D League means a whole heck of a lot, but when you have a D League MVP, that's somebody that has a very strong possibility of coming up to the NBA and performing. I think that he's going to be our backup small forward.
And what is his game? Would you say defensive?
No, he's all about hitting the three. He's just like every single one of those Rio Grande Valley Vipers. He is all about hitting the three.
And that's the way the Rockets do play. I know you're not huge on McHale either. Uh, you're not bought into him, are you?
No, I don't think he. I mean, again, I just watch those games. I'm a coach. I watch some of those games, and I really wonder about his rotations. The fact, he just makes a lot of decisions when I'm watching those games that leave me scratching my head.
Yeah. I haven't watched nearly as many Rockets games as you obviously. So I couldn't really play into a lot of the decisions and so forth that he made. But like I said, I just think they got to get themselves, if they could pick up somewhere along the line, like you said, a little bit more size, a decent center, a big power forward, somebody to back up Dwight Howard, then it's not looking horrible. Ariza, I think, once again, for the situation that team was in, I think Ariza, you couldn't do any better in a replacement for what was out there and what was available. So I think that was a decent signing. It's not the best small forward in the league by any stretch of the imagination, but for what was out there and what they could get their hands on, I think they did really well getting Ariza. And you're right. I'll buy Harden and Howard leading the team to the playoffs on themselves. But the way I also feel about Harden and that frustrating defense, and I know you feel the same way at times. And that's another issue right there. And I'm not actually bought into the fact that James Harden, to be honest with you, he's such a talent. He's just an incredible talent. He's a great scorer, but I'm not sure he's another guy who would be a leader. That's the other problem I have with the Rockets right now is, James Harden and Dwight Howard like to talk, but are they true team leaders? That's the question I have. Dwight Howard did do some changing last year. I think he's happy in Houston, and that could make a huge difference, but he's never been a true leader. And that's one of the reasons I don't believe, that he's won yet. And that's the other question I have about this team. Like I say, they like to talk. They like to talk a lot, but are they leaders? Do you see either one of those guys as leaders?
I don't see either one of them being leaders, but again, this just goes back to the fact that I'm someone that pays attention to a lot of the Rockets. I can tell you that Patrick Beverley is a bona fide leader of that team.
And that's huge. And with me, the book is still out on Beverly, and I definitely want to see him a bit more. He's becoming more and more intriguing. His defense, the way he plays, he's last year he got his name out there definitely, and I can't. I really want to see him play a little bit more this year. That being said, I don't know how great he is, but like you said, he may not be that guy that takes you into the future. But there were worse. There are teams in a lot worse or worse point guard positions than the Rockets are. And once again, Isaiah Cannon's another nice young player there, somebody to keep your eye on. But I think the problem's going to be down low. I think the biggest problem's going to be down low, and your reserves, you guys coming off the bench. I think that's just the big problem they have, and why I don't see them. I don't see them doing any better than a seven seed, 7 or 8 seed. I know you don't want to hear that
Oh, I
from
mean,
me.
it isn't that I just disagree. I mean, I don't see them necessarily even winning our division because the Spurs obviously are in the way, but this team was, this team beat again, and basically, I say this team because basically, with the exception of Parsons, this team is still together. This is the same team that did pretty much everything last year. We beat the Spurs last year. We won the season series against them. They played their starters in all of those games. There was not they didn't have games where they were getting in trouble with the league for sitting Parker and Ginobili and Duncan, and they were playing their guys and they were playing their game, and we beat the Spurs. We beat the NBA champions. I don't think that Ariza is enough of a decrease from looking at Parsons' output to looking at Ariza's output. I don't think there's enough of a drop off there to say that we're suddenly going to go. I mean, yes, we were a 7 seed last year, but I think that with having guys around Dwight who can shoot the ball. I mean, you remember the last time that a team put sharpshooters around Dwight Howard and what they were able to do. It's absolutely incredible. And that Magic team, well, they didn't want to win a championship. They were a very good, dangerous team because Dwight is a good enough player that he can anchor the paint by himself. He's so athletic. And if they put 4 guys who can shoot around the perimeter around him, they put somebody like, Donatas Moniunas next to him on defense who's at least 7 feet tall and can bother shots and step out and shoot the 3, maybe has an inside game. I mean, I was watching him in Summer League this year. Looks like he's been working with Hakeem. I'm not saying that he's going to go out and drop, 30, 40 points at any given time this year, but he's definitely looking like he's going to step up his offensive production. So I'm not as low on them. I mean, I know it's a huge homer. I know I'm a huge Rockets fan, and it's hard for me to admit that we're in trouble. But I don't think that we're a 7 seed. I'm looking at the teams out west. I don't see any of them have significantly improved to the point that they're gonna hold us down or hold us back. And again, I'm seeing a two-star league in this today's NBA, and Harden and Howard are not 2 bad stars to build around. Now, you did bring up a good point on Harden's defense, and that's another great thing about Ariza, and another great thing about Beverly is Ariza is one of the better defending small forwards in the league. So having him there and having Beverly there, that's 2 guys out of the perimeter that can sort of help hide some of Harden's deficiencies.
It's just that frustrates me about Harden a lot. How great of a player he could be if he did have the defense, but I don't know. I'm just looking at the whole Western Conference, and I'm sorry, but I'm holding to my 7 or 8 because there's just some, you know, there's some definite better teams out there right now. Maybe a
There are better
6,
teams, and I'm not.
maybe a 6, but you got Portland, you got the Thunder out there. Obviously the Spurs. Pelicans are a better team right now. You got the Mavericks who improved a lot. So you got Golden State. Who knows where they're gonna end up? Oh, you got the Clippers. Nobody's picketing. Nobody's not going to play any games this year. The Clippers are going to be the Clippers. So there are a lot of good teams. As good as the East has got this year, the West is still a very, very good conference. And
Yeah, the West is definitely a good conference, and I don't even think that, after the offseason we've had, I wouldn't even say that I'm predicting the Rockets to finish, even in the Western Conference Finals. I think we're going to probably lose in the second round, but I definitely think that saying that we're a 8-7 seed, somewhere in that range, is definitely too low because, again, I'm looking at those teams too. I think that, Portland is going to be a good team. LaMarcus Aldridge is definitely dangerous, and the problem with Portland is that they were probably the worst team for us to face in the playoffs because they match up against us very well, and they have a guy that can take advantage of our one real positional weakness, which is power forward. So Portland is a dangerous team for us, and I'm not saying that we're a better team than them by any stretch of the imagination, especially seeing what happened, but then again, I'm looking at what Nicholas Batum did to us last year in the playoffs, and I can't help but imagine what would happen this year with Ariza able to stop him. Because Parsons definitely made I don't know if you heard about this, but before the playoffs last year, Parsons said that he was the best small forward in the playoffs in this series. And that did nothing but incite Nicholas Batum into absolutely lighting us up in a couple of games. Ariza's a veteran. He's not going to make that mistake. He's going to be able to defensively stop him. Again, power forward being a huge position of weakness for us. But I'm not sold on the fact that we're not competitive with the Warriors. I'm not sold on the fact that we're not competitive with any of those teams you named. Heck, I would even say that we're competitive with the Thunder because, and again, this is just because it's the Thunder, James Harden seems to go out and drop 45 every single time he faces that team.
he does that.
So that matches. Yep. That matches Durant's output every single time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it remains to be seen. We're talking about it. We're jumping on this. It may be a little bit too early. This conversation absolutely can change before September. October rolls around. So, there's a lot to be seen. Going off the way we see the teams this way. So, just one real of a quick hit, or if you have anything else on the Rockets there. But so what seed do you see them finishing at?
I see us being the 5 seed out west.
About a 5.
I don't think we finish first in our division, which means that we can't be anywhere higher than that. But I see us being the 5 seed out west. I think that we have pieces in place, and again, point guard does scare me quite a lot. You're absolutely right, but most of the better teams out west are good because they have a dominant point guard. Patrick Beverley can slow down Steph Curry. He can slow down Tony Parker. Heck, he stopped him in a couple games last year. Tony Parker hates playing against Patrick Beverley.
Everybody hates playing
Westbrook
against
does
Patrick
too.
Beverley.
Everybody hates playing against him. So. Yeah. Having teams that rely strongly on scoring point guards, that's not a great matchup for them because even though he's not dropping a whole bunch of points every night, he's still able to stop them from doing that. And for teams that do rely on their point guards to score, that's a real hindrance to them.
Right, and obviously they're getting they're scoring from the 2, obviously, where you can get away with that a little bit. So, he may be a good fit on that team. I still got him going a little bit lower than you, but we'll see what happens. That's why we watch these games. And, I hate to crap on your team, but that's just the way I'm looking at it right now. Like I said, this can all change in October. Who knows what all the rosters are going to look like, but once again, they are starting to shape, and you're starting to see a little bit what we're going to be looking at.
Hey man, whatever. We're better than the Celtics, so that's all I care about.
No doubt about it. Pretty much almost everybody is. We still got Philly. So, we got that. But, that's going to be another conversation for another day. And I don't even really like to think about it right now. But,
well, let's hit our final topic. We decided that we're going to do a recurring segment on this show where we're going to talk basically about how we would get certain teams to the next level. Whether it's the championship for some guys or whether it's just playoffs for other teams. what we would do to get those teams in the right position to succeed. And the team of the week is the Sacramento Kings.
The Sacramento Kings. Um, they definitely need help. It's going to take some work to get them to the finals. Uh, right now, I mean, we were thinking about it, and that's just the team that came to mind that um, seems very, very far away from a championship. They were in very, very rough shape. I mean, as a GM, one of the first moves I tried to make this year at this point, because I'm looking to blow this team up pretty much. I think DeMarcus Cousins is the one guy you want to keep. I think he's your centerpiece. Once again, we always come back to point guard and center is being you've got to lock those positions up. And at 23 years old, I'd say DeMarcus Cousins is somebody I'd want to keep on that team. I
Well, hold on a minute. Let me ask you a question
Sure.
here, because we do talk a lot about point guard and center, and I just want to help the listeners understand a little bit. Because if you look at this team from last year, they had some pretty good players at that position. Isaiah Thomas scored 20 points a game last year for them. DeMarcus Cousins obviously had a great season as well. He had 22 and 11. So what held the Kings back? If they had those great players at that position, what held them back from being a much better team?
Well, for starters, right now, neither one of those guys are great players. They played very well last year, but I wouldn't put them in any category of great players. They're not Harden and Howard. Let's put it that way. That's for starters. Both of them need to progress. So I still say you can't. It depends on who the two players. I mean, you're talking very young players in those two guys. I think there's a difference when you talk those two guys compared to, a couple other guys out there. They're no Westbrook. They're not Westbrook and Durant or anything like that. So, you know, I think a ton of potential and so forth. Thomas is gone now. Uh, One of the things I would do as a GM, honestly, one of the first things I try to do, anyways, is try and move Rudy Gay if I can with that humongous contract, but 1 year left on that contract. Um, and I would try and move him. That would be a starting point right there because I think no matter the amount of money that he would want to sign for in the following year, next year, would be more money than a team like that would want to spend. Um, maybe keep Macklemore, but Macklemore is another one who hasn't shown me that much yet. They got the rookie there, Stauskas. Who knows what he can do once again? We talk about how very good the draft class is, but Stauskas is another player. You just don't know, especially where he went in the draft. So, but the first thing I would do as a GM is I don't know, but I would try and get rid of that Rudy Gay. Just try and get whatever you can for that. Drop that. It's just I forget what his contract is, but I know he's getting paid a lot of money this year, and that would be the first thing I did, and just try and retool. And if it takes another year, instead of being close, they're a team that I think's actually, closer to working the lottery, the high lottery. At this point, that's the way I see them. It's tough, but I'm almost into a full rebuild in my mind. But keeping Cousins as being the starting point right there.
Sort of seems to be the theme tonight, but I completely disagree. I I'm looking at their roster right now, and they've hit the high lottery so much. You look at this team; they have guys who were drafted 7th, 2nd, 5th overall, 8th overall, 10th, 12th, 8th. That's 8 guys on that team that were taken in the lottery. That's not a team that needs to continue to go down that path. This is a team that needs to start figuring out what to do with the pieces that they have, because going to the lottery the way that they're drafting clearly isn't working.
Yeah, but one thing real quick, like you said high lottery. When you play yourself to the high lottery, guess where that gets you? To the high lottery. That's exactly
Yeah,
where it
but if you
gets you.
keep going to
So
the they've gone to the high lottery for the last 5 years. What are they going to do with all those picks? Are
no,
they going to keep tanking
I
until
think
they
where you
find something?
misconstruct when I say, when I say they actually need to work their way down to. I should have said, and I think I said high lottery, low lottery. Where they need to get themselves into a top five pick along the way, and they're not getting there because they're just
Here's
good
okay. So here's my
enough.
issue with your
Go ahead.
here's my here's my issue with your method is that you're saying that this team needs to rebuild. They need to get rid of Rudy Gay. Okay, why is it that the teams that need to rebuild need to get rid of those expiring contracts? Rudy Gay is going to have an expiring contract next offseason. Guess who's going to be an free agent next offseason? Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. There are going to be a ton of free agents next year. Why is it that Rudy Gay needs to go to another team to free up space during this season? Why can't they keep him, see what he does this year? I mean, again, Rudy Gay had one of his best seasons ever with the Kings. He had 20 points a game. He had, almost 6 rebounds a game. He was shooting efficiently, which is something I never thought I would say about Rudy Gay ever. And he's still young. I don't know why you wouldn't take a chance and see what he can do for this year. If he doesn't do what you want or what you need, then you get rid of him at the end of the season. You use the fact that he isn't an expiring contract, and you use the fact that he has just freed up so much cap space to go after another free agent.
Because if you move him, you can get something for him. If you move,
You can get something for him by having him be an expiring contract for you this year.
what are you going to get? You'd have to re-sign him after next year. You'd have to.
You don't have to.
If
No,
you
you
want to
don't. You
keep
have
him,
cap
you'd have
space.
to. But you're going to pick up your cap space. But if you trade him, if you move him, you pick up your cap space, and you're going to get something for him. You are going to get some assets for him, something, be it draft pick, be it a couple players, whatever it may be.
Again, this team isn't. So if you're looking at Rudy Gay, you're not going to be getting a high lottery pick. You're not going to be going out and getting a team that is going to be hitting the high lottery again. I don't even. This team isn't in a position right now where they're going to be. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. So instead of getting rid of Rudy Gay, what if they held on to their current pick, which is going to possibly be a high lottery pick or at least be in the lottery? They have an expiring contract there, so they can go out and get a high pick. They can go out and get a free agent next year, like a KD or like Westbrook, somebody who's going to be a free agent next season.
See, the one problem there is I think the Kings are one of those teams. I mean, come on, face it. Durant, no matter how much money they throw at him, is not going to go play for Sacramento. It's not going to happen. And they're one of those teams that I think those big free agents are not going to come to. I don't think they're going to sign with you. I mean, they look at it like this is Sacramento. This is what they are all the time. I mean, it's been a while since that team has been a very good team. And I just don't see a Durant or anybody going to Sacramento next year, no matter how much money, because there are other teams that can throw just as much money at them.
So what are they going to keep being? They're just going to keep being a team that goes out and drafts people in the lottery, and then after a couple of years they leave and they just keep being on repeat, stuck in the mud. No,
I think they
have to free up.
No, I think they need to look at other teams' models. Take a look. They need to. I hate to say it because I don't agree. I don't agree with it, and they were about the most blatant out there. But you take the Sixers for example. I hate even using the word tanking, but regardless, they did what they did. Now we're talking about Philadelphia. We've had the conversation many a times that in a few years how scary and how good this team can be. And sometimes
this team has already tanked. This team has tried tanking already. That's what I'm saying, is that they have already tried tanking. Just because it's not the NFL. Just because you're the worst team in the league doesn't mean that you're going to get the highest draft pick. I haven't honestly paid enough attention over the last 6 years to know how many times this team had a shot at number one. This and it's probably because most of those have gone to the Cavaliers. But
no, because the Kings are a perennial 10 seed. That's why. That's why they don't get these great that's why they don't get these great picks. It seems like we talk about the Hawks the Hawks. Everybody talks about the Hawks being that 8 seed year in and year out. One thing you can always count on is the Hawks being. And to me, the Kings, I'd have to look it up, but to me, in my own mind, they're that 10 seed year in and year out, and that's not going to get you. Very rarely will that get you a good player in the draft. This happens to be one of those years, actually, that you can get good players when you're picking at that point. But
again, I'm as a Houston fan, I can't you just because you're a perennial 8th seed does not necessarily mean that you are going to be stuck in the mud forever. You have the possibility of being mediocre for a long time. And we were mediocre. We were an 8 seed, a 9 seed, right in that area. We were that team for 4 straight years. Then we made moves and something good happened. We were able to land James Harden. You have to continue to build a team that players want to come to and want to stay in order to, it's just like you said, nobody wants to go to Sacramento. They're not going to want to go to Sacramento if you just keep drafting, the 3rd overall pick in the draft. That's not, because not all drafts are like this, and you're not always going to end up with, a possibly transcendent player at number 3. I mean, you look at like Michael Beasley, who was drafted number 2, he ended up doing nothing. We were just talking about the Heat. You can't rely on the fact that just because you're bad, you're going to be able to rebuild your team.
no, you can't. But I do think there are times when that is something that needs to be done. And I know, we're going to touch upon this in later podcasts and so forth, but one of the teams that actually is doing better at that, and I didn't think they could as the team I just brought up, is the Hawks, where I think they've had a really good offseason. We're going to get into them a little bit. But I'm just talking about myself in the GM seat, and I just, if you don't blow it up, the question is, if you don't blow it up, what are the moves that you're going to make? Because right now, essentially, in my opinion, at center, other than center, you have a need in every position. Like I say, Rudy Gay, he's bounced around a little, and who knows if he's going to stay, and how much money is he going to ask for? I know he's not going to get nearly as much as he got on this last contract, but
okay. So let me answer that for you then. I'm looking at this team. I'm looking at what they have. They have Darren Collison, who's not a terrible point guard. He's pretty good defensively. No, he's not going to be dropping a ton of points every night. They got Ben McLemore, Nick Stauskas, and Jason Terry at shooting guard. Okay. I think that they either need to take they need to take stock in the fact that they have Stauskas, who's possibly a good player in the future, but they need to figure out shooting guard position today. Rudy Gay, I agree he's not worth the money he's getting paid right now, but we talked about this with Melo a couple podcasts ago, maybe it was even last podcast, where if you have a guy who is in the wrong position, filling the wrong role on a team, he becomes a bad player. He looks like a bad player. I think that's been Rudy Gay throughout his career. Because when he was playing with Isaiah Thomas and when he was playing with DeMarcus Cousins and they were all scoring 20 points every night, that was a good position for him to be in. Because he didn't feel like he had to carry the offensive load. When you look at his career, he's been sort of looked at as the guy. I remember when he was younger, he was sort of looked at as, I know I heard this comparison at points, was the next T-Mac. Where he was looked at to carry a large offensive load for his team, and he was never that guy. He was, and so he was sort of forced into taking a lot of bad shots, and that tanked his field goal percentage, made a lot of teams really not like him, especially with the analytics movement that's been taking over the NBA. Rudy Gay is not a bad player. He, on the right team, he can do a lot of good things, and I don't think that if he's successful in Sacramento, especially this year, when you're basically, you're so pro getting rid of Rudy Gay, they don't have, there's nowhere near as many reasons to get rid of Rudy Gay as there is for the Celtics to get rid of Rondo. So I think you got to keep Rudy Gay. Obviously, I agree with you. You got to keep DeMarcus Cousins. Jason Thompson is not a solution at power forward.
No.
So I think that what you can do if you're Sacramento is you can, package Jason Thompson, Carl Landry, and one of those young shooting guards for, you know, I think that you can make a team work with Reggie Evans or, some other power forward out there, just fill a spot for a little bit. Just have somebody who can come in and get rebounds. Because DeMarcus Cousins is going to be scoring your points down low. Just have someone who can get rebounds. Rebound the ball. That's it. You get somebody who's a tough workhorse who's going to go out and do that. That's all I ask out of my power forward. So I trade Jason Thompson, Ben McLemore, Carl Landry. I trade all those guys out for somebody who can play the shooting guard position fairly well. I can't think of any off the top of my head that would be available. But, somebody like an Avery Bradley who's going to be able to play defense, who can shoot the three at a reasonable clip. Somebody out there to play shooting guard for this team. Somebody who can straight up score, who can straight up shoot. Nick Stauskas, I think, is the shooting guard of the future for this team. I love that pick on this team because Darren Collison is, he's going to be able to spread the ball around. This guy can, again, absolutely flat out score the ball. So I don't think you need to worry about going out and getting a young shooting guard, but you need to fill that spot right now. So you go out and you get a shooting guard, you run him next to Darren Collison. Again, somebody who can take the scoring weight off of Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins so those guys can keep doing their thing. And then next offseason, if you want to keep Rudy Gay, you can keep him. They do have enough cap room at that point that they can fill the power forward spot. They don't have to go out and get a superstar at power forward. Not with those guys if Rudy Gay has another season like this. Not with three guys that can score 20 points a night. So you got to go out.
So moving forward in 14, who would be your power forward then? What would you do for that position? Because that doesn't leave you with much. It leaves you with Quincy Acey
and Reggie Evans. But again, like you can go out
Evans at the same time. Yep.
Well, Evans is already on their roster. I mean,
but go ahead.
Nobody's tougher than that guy.
Yeah. But do you think that makes the team better this year? Or what does it do?
I think that sets you up for a good offseason and potentially the ability to become a contender the year after.
I suppose, we may not be in a league right now where there's 3 stars, but I think we definitely are in a league where you got 2.5. You get that second, you got that half a star out there. And like I say, the starting point is, to see what Cousins is going to, he's already very good, but what is he going to turn into? How do you have his ceiling?
I think, you said that Cousins was worse than Dwight Howard at some point when you were talking, and I look at him and he was a better scorer than Howard last year, and Howard got more rebounds, but he still had 11 rebounds a night. If I'm looking at my center and he's going out and he's averaging 22 and 11, and he's that young, oh, absolutely. I don't know where his ceiling is going to be. I'm not going to go out and say that he's going to be, a 30 and 15 guy, but I think that, Boogie can be the next, what Dwight Howard was in Orlando, which is why I want to, if I'm looking at this team, I want to surround them with shooters. I want to go out and get a power forward that can shoot. I want, somebody who can step out and take, a 15-foot jumper, maybe even take a 3.
So, once again, my biggest issue with that team right now is just how you could actually get free. That would be the key to the team, is how, if we go your route, is how do you get the free agents to that team? And that's still, I think, one of the things that would be one of the bigger problems out there for them, regardless of the moves they make. Because the moves they make would not, to other free agents or whatnot, may not see or understand the direction that you would want to go with the team and what you're doing with it.
Well, that's where it comes down to be. Every GM has to be a good salesman, and that's just the way it is. You look at the way that the Rockets lured Howard to Houston, or even a more relevant example is the way that Mark Cuban lured Parsons away from the Rockets. He was able to sit down with Parsons, who sees himself as a rising star in the NBA, somebody who's going to be a superstar eventually. I think in his own mind he thinks that. And Cuban was able to be like, look, I'm offering you star money because I see the same thing you do. If you're Sacramento and you have, Ray McCollum, who had a great summer league, and again, summer league is what it is, but if he has even close to similar performances this year, you're looking at a point guard of the future. You have Nick Stauskas, who I personally think is a shooting guard of the future. You might also even be able to go out and get a better shooting guard for the short term. If Rudy Gay has another great season, you've got small forward lockdown. You've got one of the best rising centers in the NBA. I'm not looking at, if you're going out and you're trying to recruit a power forward, I don't see that as being a hard pitch to make.
See, but after everything you said, everything that screams to me screams 10 seed. And it just screams 10 seed, and it seems, like I say, that's where they've been year after year. And I don't know. If you're one of the high sought after free agents in what is supposedly one of the best free agent class coming out next year, I'd be hard pressed to sign with Sacramento. I really would. I just think there's better options out there for free agents, and I don't see it. That's the one issue that I have, is I don't see it with a team like Sacramento. It's something you actually hear me talk about with Boston also. For whatever reason, if you look back on the history of the Boston Celtics, they never get free agents. Nobody signs with the Celtics. And, it's one of those things that they have to go through. And on this team, unfortunately, I still have them as, and I hate to talk this way because it's almost sacrilegious, but just get yourself into a high pick in the lottery. That's where I stand on these guys right now.
If this was a team that had success drafting players and turning them into successful, making a successful team out of them, I would completely agree. I would say, look, they've had great drafting history. This team has done a great job in the draft in years past. I would say that the only time this team has done well in the draft in recent years is with the Stauskas pick this year. So, I'm not totally sold on that team being a team that can really make it work with the draft. I think that they need to figure out, because I think that they have the role players in place right now where if they go out and they are able to land, I think they even already have a superstar in Cousins, as long as they can keep his head on straight. So they need to go out, and they don't need to necessarily go out and sign a Durant. That was just me saying that why would you get rid of Gay? I think they need to go out and they need to get, one of the top 10, somebody in the next free agency class who can play starting power forward on pretty much any team in the NBA. Barring the teams that have a superstar there. I think that is the kind of player that they need to go out and get if they are able to land a good shooting guard. Somebody who's efficient, somebody who can shoot the three well, catch and shoot well, especially with Darren Collison being the kind of player he is who likes to attack. You need somebody who can stand in the corner, stand on the wing, and be able to shoot the three. You also need somebody who can be able to pass. So those two things are what you look for in the guys that you're trying to trade for in the shooting guard position. Again, brings me back to Avery Bradley, who has point guard experience, who can definitely shoot the three, who can play great defense out west, especially marking up against guys like, James Harden. You definitely need that.
All right. Well, that pretty much leaves us at the Kings right now. Just things we would do. And personally, part of the game was, if I was GM of the Kings, what would I do? So I would hope possibly that I make better decisions in the future in drafting and so forth. But so once again, just looking at the Kings right now, it's definitely two ways they could go with it, and we'll just see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think the Kings are one of those teams that I think a lot of people out there, just one of those teams you're kind of rooting for to do all right. You'd like to see them turn it around. They're not a hateable team. It just seems like they're the same team year in and year out. So that's where I'm at on on the Kings. You got anything else on that, or you just want to jump to some quick hits here?
Well, I mean, I think one of my big quick hits is actually totally tied to the Kings, and the conversations we've been having all night is it can be incredibly difficult. Again, and this sort of comes from a position as a Houston fan where I've been hearing a lot of the negative talk towards Daryl Morey and stuff. It can be incredibly difficult sitting in the front office of any one of these teams. It's not just the teams that you hear about, like the Rockets or the Cavaliers or the Heat, that are seem to be sort of dominating the news these days. It's people like who are sitting in the Kings front office who you can't think of what to do next. Do you blow this team up? Do you try and go for the rebuild, or do you try and stay the course? Do you say, okay, like, I've got these pieces in place, what am I going to do with them next? There are so many teams in the NBA who are at that point, who are right on the cusp, and they're one superstar away from being a true championship contender. They're also one injury away from being the bottom of their division, and it's just so hard to be in that seat and making those calls. It really is. It's a challenging thing to do as not just as basketball fans, but I'm sure even as people who have years of experience and are looking at the teams and the league in a totally different way. It can be incredibly complicated.
No doubt, no doubt. But
I guess my other quick hits, just that I'm looking at possible fits for a guy like Rajon Rondo, and I just was thinking about this a little bit more. Is how much the league is going towards not just a scoring point guard, but having two guards out on the court who can do the same thing and or who can both score and both pass, and not necessarily just look at a guy who can have 11 assists in a game. And that brought me into the whole idea of the fact that there are there's a significant decline in the shooting guard position these days. James Harden is one of the better shooting guards in the NBA. He probably shouldn't be. In all honesty, he is a very gifted scorer, but with his defense, in 10 years ago, he would probably be top 5, maybe even top 10. So it's a definitely an interesting trend to watch, is watching the point guard position become more scoring oriented in today's NBA. You're watching almost a decline of the shooting guard as more and more teams want two guards out on the court who can both score and both pass, who aren't necessarily going to be that one guy who's leading the team in assists and leading the team in scoring like the shooting guard used to be. And it's interesting watching the NBA becoming more and more positionless. As you watch, like they got rid of the center position from the All-Star game. They now just have teams out there that want to put bigs out there. It's very interesting watching more and more players and watching more and more teams build around this positionless idea of the NBA.
no doubt, no doubt, it's a different game. It's definitely a different
So that's
game.
all I got tonight. It's what do you got for us,
I
Steve?
just got a couple quick ones. I'm gonna go a little off what we normally talk about and so forth. But real quick, I just want to throw out a quick shout out, honestly, to Adam Silver. Some of the things that he's done since he's been commissioner of the league, you gotta give him a thumbs up. The way he's handled the Sterling thing from the beginning, he took care of things real swift and so forth. The Isaiah Austin, getting drafted to the
Absolutely.
NBA was
Absolutely.
just, it was a heartwarming moment. It was true class. And then he turns around, and now Isaiah Austin, once he graduates school, has a job with the NBA. So, thumbs up there. The latest news right now is, a lot of the players out there, I guess, lobbying LeBron being pretty much one of the more vocal ones, lobbying for a longer All-Star break, possibly 7 days. And he's the type of commissioner, at least they have it in conversations. They're talking about it. It may be something that actually happens this year. So he's listening to the players. He's continuing what the NBA has always done, working with the community and so forth. But he's had a lot of curveballs thrown at him this year, and I think he's done a really, really good job. Something a little different I'm going to do this week, and I'm probably going to do it every week because I am the old timer. But I'm going to throw out there a person who you need to YouTube this week. And it's going to go back. We had this conversation earlier tonight a little bit, but it's my favorite point guard of all time. I was looking at some video of him again tonight, Magic Johnson. And somebody you definitely, if you'd like to see the point guard position played the way it's supposed to be played, and as John was just talking about how this is almost a positionless NBA right now. Well, Magic Johnson was one of the earlier players who actually did that. So check him out on YouTube. He's just got some passes that will just absolutely blow you away. And real quick, on the Lakers thing there, my final question every podcast might just be, what are the Lakers doing? I have no idea. But I see they just they finally got a coach because we were wondering what was going on there when they were going to get a coach. They called old friend Byron Scott back to the Lakers. Hasn't had a great coaching career. I don't know if it's the great this great move. I mean, this is their third coach in 4 seasons with the Lakers. So, Brian Scott has a record of 416, 521. He just his last time was with the Cavaliers. I don't see him as being one of the great coaches in the NBA. And once again, what are the Lakers doing? And that's pretty much all I have for this week.
All right. Well, I think we had a good show tonight. A good, nice conversation. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you next week with more NBA breakdown, more NBA news analysis, and as always, we're going to be hitting the team of the week. So thank you for tuning in.
Thank you very much. It's been great.